Right now.
Yep. Check. Should I finish that bulbous?
Yeah.
To try and go back, and then we'll finish answering that question as well. So the bulbous heads, particularly if you isolate them and separate them, they're not really the heads that you want to enjoy dabbing. To me, and it's why I always, when I kind of was getting into it with oil guys back in the day, everyone always thought, oh, Bubble Man hates the oil. I was like, no, I hate the things that are in the butane that are getting into the oil that are poisoning young people. This was before they learned about N-butane and medical grade butane, and so there was all these different things to be thinking about. But with the butane, a perfect example, it's not always what's like putting something in that's the same, but it's like what's missing. And so, you know, with butane, that's a non-polar solvent. That pulls non-polar components out of the plant, and it leaves things behind that polar
essential oils.
Yeah, exactly. It's leaving those behind. I'm not really sure where I was going. Well, this is Jim Frere information. This is a chemist friend of mine down from Oregon, and he was basically trying to find out back in the early days why people that were smoking butane oil, before people like yourself got better at it. Like in the early days when they were using cans.
Yeah, we got a bad rep right off the bat for solvents because people are exploding themselves, and it's dangerous. It's a highly volatile explosive. And
but if done safely in a properly built lab,
so
the problem was prohibition. We weren't building safe labs.
And as extractors, we weren't even really allowed to. We weren't allowed to reveal ourselves as extractors. We were still illegal, yet we could sell it on the shelves. So it was illegal to extract, but you could have it as a loophole. And now, in our current age, extraction has gone so far, and we have all these safe machines, and we have safe rooms, and so we're slowly destroying the myth that we can't do it properly.
Oh, it can be done properly.
Take out the solvents properly and such, and we were literally stumbling around trying to figure it out in the past.
It was just unfortunate that it was so easy to do, and the way it spread, pun intended, like wildfire. And for me, I released bubble bags in March of 1999, and Indra released the butane method on Euroa.org in February of '99, dude. It was like a month later. I couldn't even believe it. And it was also, back then, and I feel rosin is a very similar thing. I love them, don't get me wrong. Like, I love that you can have your oil and I can have my solventless oil. But generally what I found out with those oils, at least from a production standpoint, this was the beginning when very few people were making hash. And what I'd find was people who understood how to truly grow soil and have a biome and have amazing plants grow out of those, they would express themselves in a way that some of the people that were growing with salts in the basement in a pipe system just weren't able to pull off. And it was a very small percentage of people, and they would buy bubble bags and put their material through and then send me pictures back of this full melt caramel hash, and I'd be like, you basically made some of the nicest hash in the world. And they were just from all over these random places, but the 90% would get a hash that was like the sand under your feet. And they would ask me, how do I get it to melt like yours? And I'd have to tell them, grow better weed. And that is a long path to be like, oh, I'm going to learn about volatile organic compounds and trichomes, and I'm going to learn about like a biome and mycorrhizosphere and symbiotic relationships, and I'm going to learn about all the compounds the plant needs sequestered for it. I'm going to learn about genetics and cultivars and gene synthases, and on and on and on it goes. It's like a 20, 30, 40-year fucking journey. And most people were like, or I could just blast it with butane and it'll come out gold. And so that's what they did. And now people... and that came later, but they're still doing it with rosin, because a lot of the rosin is really a way to get mediocre flour to turn into decent dabs, or most hash rosin is mediocre hash pressed into rosin because it won't dab. Because if you have 6-star hash, I'm sorry, you do not need to turn that shit into rosin.
Because rosin is a purification. And to go to his point, we are literally a process. All we do is the same process over and over again based off our observations of the yields and everything, the quality. We know if it's good or not. But it's really built around the cultivators and the cultivar itself, which is a simpler way of saying what you just said right there. That's all that matters, right? Because we are a process. We're going to repeat that process over and over and over again. And when I saw the rosin revolution occur, I realized, well, this is amazing for all humans out there that love cannabis and can take it and extract it at their house and press it. It's safe for them to do. You can grow your own flowers, you can press your own flowers, you can gap it fresh right there. Hydrocarbon extraction, not that.
I would say we're not just a process. We are the unveilers of the flame. And when we can show growers that they produce the true flame, because every grower thinks they produce the true flame.
True.
But when you can show when you can show someone the sandy resin or the subpar oil, and they can look at it and say, I'm gonna learn from this. I'm coming back and making this better. That's the path you want to take every time. But it is the path of most resistance. It is not the lazy person's path.
And like I also say lazy. You say lazy, but I call it production. And you can't do the same kind of production you can with rosin as you can with resin. And in our world, we need to produce.
Especially as we went legal across.
Yeah,
the
so from a
states.
business point of view, live resin has its place and solvent has its place forever.
Well, and
Because we're going to as we produce so much cannabis in all countries and up their cannabis amount by a huge amount. For us, it's amazing because we can play with all these different things and we have all the science to test it now to really see our theories test out and prove out as we go along. We've built our catalogs of cultivars that we know do great in our type of extraction. So there is like and I come from the legacy, the heady boy crowd, where it was always about the highest level of product. And now that I've gotten into the legal, there's so much more layering that you have to pay attention to, and truly, it changes how you think about your production. Like you said yesterday at the fireside, when you tried to sell all the different screens, and they're like, no, you're not going to do that.
Well,
So that's not feasible for how we do our distribution and sales.
100%, because back initially we could actually take a crop of a single strain and cherry pick the very best flowers. Those are obviously going to be sold as flowers, but then take all the lower flowers that I wouldn't personally want to smoke, and if presuming the really good quality harvested product, and you could send them through that traditional product. But as we started ramping up the size of our gardens, there reached a point where like, hey, we have enough flower to meet our demand. There's all the lower half of the plants don't really fit in my dry room, but I can either send them through a solventless wash if they're good, or if I have the capacities, start washing them.
So to go back to the material,
yeah.